When it comes to dating, relationships, and interacting with women, which pill should we take? There are so many people out there nowadays talking about the red pill, the blue pill, the white pill, and even the black pill. And I'm sure there's even more pills than that that people have come up with to talk about this stuff. And most of these other kind of pills are what people think your reaction should be to taking the red pill. And of course, you probably know this, but the red pill and blue pill originally came from the movie The Matrix. Maybe they got it from somewhere else as well. But it's basically when Morpheus offers Neo the option to kind of go back to his kind of safe matrixy reality or to take the red pill and learn about the deeper realities of what was going on. And we can do that with dating and relationships and women as well. And if you're here on this live stream or you're watching the replay, you probably already are at least somewhat taking the red pill because you want to know more about the deeper realities of that. And it's really interesting too, because back when I first started learning about this stuff about 21 years ago, there wasn't that much stuff out there in terms of real accurate information about what women want. There was even a movie about it back then, like, what do women want? And now we're almost flooded with information about the deeper realities of dating and relationships. And I think for the most part, that's a really good thing. And so, what I want to do today is share with you my perspective about the red pill, the blue pill, the black pill, and the white pill, because I think I have a little bit different way of looking at them than most people out there that are talking about it. And I think it might be beneficial to you just because it's a different perspective. So it might be beneficial to you. So I want to share that with you today. And what I want to do is start with the red pill, which, again, for our purposes today, there's probably a lot of different definitions and way of looking at these different pills or whatever. But just for this talk today, the red pill just means looking at the deeper layers of reality when it comes to male female dynamics. And so I want to start with the red pill, and then I want to talk about the other three pills as kind of responses to that red pill. And that will be blue pill, black pill, and white pill, and what I think about each of those. And what I actually conclude about this might surprise you. So I would stick around for this. All right, so let's start with the red pill. As you already, I'm sure, know, when it comes to dating relationships, interacting with women, male female dynamics, etc., reality is obviously not the way that society kind of makes the assumption that it is, or tries to promote, or that we see in movies or in music, or uh, that people just kind of assume growing up. Reality is not the way that we think. And reality, when it comes to dating and relationships, can be absolutely brutal. You know, if you don't understand a lot of this stuff, you can get hurt really bad, obviously, in relationships. And then, if you've been through a nasty divorce, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, it can get really brutal, especially when kids are involved and there's a divorce and there's attorneys and fees and you lose half your stuff and you're feeling it can be absolutely horrible. And that's the truth. And the thing is, like, we don't uh, think about this when we're in love and we're about to get married to a woman. Nobody is thinking about kind of the whole picture of 75 years and what that's really like and what could happen, because people are in that zone where it's like, oh, nothing's going to happen later. It's fine. And then we jump in there and then things happen later. And not even just with marriage, it's also just dating in general, right? Like, all kinds of brutal, crazy, painful, confusing stuff can happen out there. That's the truth. And it's not really shown in society that much. It's something that you have to look at yourself, take that red pill, which you're doing already, and take a look at it. And I think it's really important. So here's the thing. Yes, many women marry a guy for other reasons than they like him or love him. Yeah, they do. There's a lot of women with agendas out there. There are some women who would marry you to get a residence permit in your country. There are some women who would marry you just because they want to be married and have a kid. And then when the kid comes, they ignore you and start taking care of the kid, and they don't even really know that you exist. That happens a lot too. And the thing is, it starts to get a little different when you apply it across the board to all women in every situation when it comes to yourself. But we need to know there are women out there with agendas. And this is a little nuanced too, because some women might have an agenda in mind and then they meet a guy and actually fall in love with him too, right? So these things are a little nuanced. But yeah, women marry guys for a lot of reasons, and only one of them is that they're actually interested in him. And for a man, it's like, well, she's with me, she must be interested, right? Well, no, not necessarily. If you look around out in society, you'll notice that there's a lot of couples, if you kind of understand this deeper reality a little bit, there's a lot of couples out there where the woman is not actually in love with their boyfriend or husband. And if you've been around here for a while, there's degrees of feelings, right? So it's not just one or zero, it's like 0 to 10. And, one woman can be in love with her husband and it's like a 7 out of 10, and another can be 10 out of 10, and another can be 1 out of 10 or zero. And the reality of that is, like, a lot of women stay in a marriage with zero interest and they don't leave because either they have another agenda or they want to build up, this is subconscious, but they want to build up resentment for the guy so that once they leave, they don't have any feelings towards him at all and they're never going to come back. And so they leave at like -1 or -2 feelings, actually, where they actively dislike him and they know they're not going to come back and they don't care about what happens to him anymore. And you might have been on the other end of that one time. That also hurts. And so a lot of couples involve a woman who's not in love with the guy. And it's not really very often that we're doing that. And the simple reason for that is we're the ones who generally have to ask. And you're not going to do that unless you have some interest. You might lose interest at some point and not be able to break up. It's hard for guys to break up. But for the most part, it's the woman who's not in love and the guy's oblivious to that. And that's the truth a lot of times. And we should acknowledge that. Also, there are many women out there who do not have the characteristics that are required to build a happy, healthy, functional, and satisfying relationship over a long term. So if you've read one of my books, you know that a woman has to be great, GREATT. It's like giving, responsible, agreeable, emotionally stable, trustworthy, and trusting. She has the ability to trust you once you earn it. If she doesn't have all those qualities and or she's not available or interested in you, then she cannot be the right woman for you because you can't build the relationship that you want with her. And we should acknowledge and accept that red pill reality. That's the truth. So we need to accept that. Also, of course, people cheat, men and women, for various reasons. That's the truth. Happens a lot more often than society likes to acknowledge. And another thing about the red pill, being a nice guy in terms of male female dynamics in this specific context just means being weak, because it's not actually nice to have like a covert contract of I'm going to be a gentleman and do all these things for her and then she's going to give me this stuff in return, like love and affection and her approval and interest level. It's a little bit of a covert contract of I'm going to be a nice guy and then I'm going to get these outcomes. And because of that secret trade-off, it's not really nice. It's just being weak and kind of manipulative, right? That's kind of what it means in the dating context, instead of kind of just being an attractive man and being a strong man internally and having self-control. That's what makes you attractive and not a weak guy. And you can be a good guy and still be strong internally. And that's what we want to do. And of course, our system, I don't know if you're in the United States, there's a lot of different ways of doing this around the world, different countries, but in the United States, our system itself is pretty unfair and unequal when it comes to divorce. In the modern world, it's pretty hard to be the guy most of the time in most states going through that process in most situations. It's a lot harder to be the male. And it's not really fair in the modern world where, women are more equal, they make their own money. And I think that we should work towards building a better system that's fair to everyone, especially the kids, and kind of recalibrate that because it is absolutely terrible what happens to a lot of guys out there. And if you're like an ultra net worth individual, let's say, marriage might be something that you should be extra cautious about and consider even some other options. Think about every possibility on that because it is brutally unfair a lot of times. And we have to acknowledge that. And I think we should acknowledge it before you get married. I think everyone should have to go to divorce court before they get married and sign a marriage contract. Because if you see what happens on the other end of it, which I do frequently, you're going to be red pilled and you're going to go in with your eyes wide open, which is something that we want. And so, yeah, uh, I think that our system is a little or a lot biased against men at the end of a relationship if things don't work out, especially if you have kids, and it can be brutal. So we need to acknowledge that. That is the reality right now. And it can get nasty in general. Even like, let's say you just have a mutually agreed upon divorce or whatever, you know, besides just the like system, it's real can get really nasty. People using the kids against each other and all kinds of crazy stuff happens. So it can absolutely be brutal, of course. Um, and so I would say that, if a woman is not interested in you and available and she's not GREATT great, she doesn't have those characteristics that we must have to have the kind of relationship that we want with a woman, I would say it's probably not worth it to date for a committed long-term relationship or a marriage. I would say it's probably not in that case. And I think that's the truth. Also, love does fade over time if you don't maintain it. If you don't implement the maintenance program that we talk about, it's very likely that a woman's interest level is going to decline over time. And if it gets too low, you're going to have a lot more problems because a woman who's deeply in love with you is different around you and treats you differently than a woman who's indifferent or has low interest or no interest. And now she's building up resentment until she actively hates you and then she leaves finally after 2 years of that. And so it's something that you have to do. Like it's something that you have to maintain. Romantic relationships absolutely take work. And we should acknowledge that. Not everyone wants to put in that work. And I don't think it's worth it if she doesn't have the qualities that are necessary for a good relationship. Also, also, women do tend to want to marry up. That's true, for a lot of reasons in the background of biology and stuff like that. But it just means that a woman in general, no matter how awesome and sweet she is, she's probably going to prefer the version of you that has a steady job to the one who's unemployed right now. That's the way it is. Yes. But that doesn't necessarily mean that every woman is a gold digger to the max times 100, right? It's just a matter of like, oh, I'm pregnant now. I can't really do as much as I was doing before. I'm having a baby now. I got to take care of it for at least a little bit. During that time, I'm vulnerable. I need someone who can take care of us, right? So that's the reality. And also, a lot of women want the guy to be a little taller than them. That's the truth, right? But most women don't, except for on dating apps, only date women who are over 6 feet tall. That's ridiculous. It's not reality. That isn't reality. That's a warped version of reality because when it comes down to it, attraction in person, most women will be attracted to a guy who's slightly taller than them. And even some of them will date someone who's shorter than them, especially if you have charisma, your body language is on point, you're confident, etc. And so on a dating app, yeah, that might be true 99%. The taller you are, the better on a dating app because it's all about stats, right? And like showing yourself and marketing and your photos and all that stuff, right? It's not as real as your body language in person. It's harder to show it in a digital way. But in person, you know, that kind of difference goes away a lot, even though I think most women would probably prefer a partner who's slightly taller than them. And then lastly, in general, Society is kind of messed up when it comes to dating and relationships. That's why I'm here talking about this stuff because you don't just naturally learn how to have good relationships or how to date women or how to attract women growing up. You know, only 10 to 30% of romantic relationships are happy, healthy, and functional. So if a majority of people are not in a happy, healthy, functional relationship, how can we give each other advice about it and do it well and like just naturally know that stuff? And then at a bigger level, society, like there's some nefarious groups of people and individuals out there that would like society to crumble or change or be different. And they have an agenda that they're pushing, and that causes problems. And the way that we do dating now is different than before. And honestly, these things are not really a straight line. They go up and down and around. It's not a continuous thing. Like in India, a couple thousand years ago, they had a type of marriage called Gandharva marriage, and they had many types of marriage at that time. And Gandharva marriage is where it's a love marriage between man and a woman, kind of like we do now. Slightly different, but very similar. And then that was wiped out in favor of the more traditional arranged marriage after that. And now we're coming back to more love marriages, even in India, where that's from. And right now, I'm in a place where they still have that arranged marriage tradition. And the thing is, there's good and bad things about that style of marriage and what we used to have in like the early 1900s, 1950s, just because things are changing doesn't mean it's all bad, but there are some negative parts of the way we do it now, obviously. Like the way we do it now is a lot different. We mostly choose a partner on our own. Our family doesn't usually right now in most subcultures inside the United States, for example, we don't get our family involved too much with the process. They're not helping you. In other countries where it's more traditional, your mom and probably your dad a little bit too, but mostly your mom is helping you decide who's going to be a good partner for you. And that can be helpful and it can be constraining. Maybe it's hard to say which one delivers the outcome that you want. And so the whole society around us has a way of doing dating and relationships that's a little warped, that doesn't really make sense. And that's why so many people are struggling with that. And that's why, resources like me exist now because it needs to fill that need. Right. And so, yes, there are some aspects of modern Western society and United States culture that are detrimental to, I think, healthy, good, functional, satisfying male female relationships and male female dynamics in general when you go out to the bar, even. And so, yes, we should acknowledge all of that. And so that's kind of the red pill. That's kind of like the deeper reality around dating and relationships. And again, if you're watching this or listening, you're already taking the red pill. You realize that you should take a look at that and that there are things that our society doesn't tell us about it that we should know. So you're already taking the red pill, which is great. And so the main question actually is, what's the appropriate response to that red pill? How should we respond? Does becoming aware of the harsher realities of dating and relationships and of modern society mean that we're doomed as a society when it comes to this stuff? And are we doomed as individuals? Given the way things actually are, what should we do and how should we respond? Well, I think that we have three choices. And again, there's probably a lot of other colors of pills that people talk about out there, and there's probably other things to talk about. But for today, I want to focus on three choices we have in terms of how we respond to the red pill reality. And the first one, of course, is the blue pill, kind of going back to living in denial of this reality and say, whatever. I'm just going to keep going doing what I was doing before. And I'm sure if you're watching or listening to this, that's not really what you're going to do, but it is an option. You can act as if reality is not true and just pull the blinders over yourself. Or if you're just someone out there in society who isn't watching this, they're still in that blue pill reality and they haven't really decided to take the red pill. Maybe they don't know that it's important to do it yet. So the blue pill is one response. And the thing is, there's some truth to this. Like ignorance is bliss a little bit. until at some point reality slaps you in the face. This is why, like, a guy who's been through a tough divorce is a really great student. I have no issues with them wanting to learn because they were forced to take the red pill, basically. But I want you to take that red pill before that happens, not necessarily take the blue pill. And so, yeah, ignorance can be bliss, but it's a short term bliss, and you're not really taking control of the things that you can control to make sure you don't have as much pain and confusion and suffering later on, which we can avoid. And I think if we can, we should. And so it's kind of like choosing your hard. It might seem like someone who's a little ignorant of reality and they're all happy and they're about to get married or whatever and they're so excited and they've never thought about this stuff. It might seem like they're better off. And in some ways, maybe they are. But there's a high chance that later on, that reality is going to smack them in the face. You probably already know this if you're here watching or listening. And so the question is, do you want a harsh reality now and to kind of accept that? Or do you want to have bigger problems and more pain later on? That's kind of the choice between the blue and the red pill, really. And it's actually hard to go back once you've taken the red pill. It's almost impossible, but you can do it in some ways. Now, on the other hand, sometimes you should take a temporary blue pill. And what I mean by that is, like, let's say you're out on a date with a woman. You don't want to be analyzing it too much. You want to be a little bit self unaware when you go out with your boys and you're meeting women, or you go on a date with an awesome woman. During that time, you want to be present and not as self aware. And then later, when that short period ends, when you're fully present, then you can get back into your head and analyze everything from a red pill perspective and say, what's the reality here? What did I do wrong? What was I missing? All of that stuff, but not in real time. Of course, you can adjust on the fly a little bit, but as much as possible, you want to be present when you're interacting with a woman. And so you can take a little blue pill when it helps you, and I think you should. And so, again, sometimes self unawareness is good. It's a little bit of a paradox. So that's the blue pill. And then there's the black pill. And the black pill can get really dark depending on who's doing it and who's talking about it and what it means to those people. So the black pill is basically like, I saw the red pill reality. Oof, it's unacceptable. I'm going to give up. Maybe I'm going to do something extreme. There's all kinds of ways you can take the black pill. And some people go as far as saying, like, your actions are always going to be futile, or at the very least, the red pill reality makes dating and relationships not worth it for me. Well, it might not be worth it for some people. That's the truth. I mean, again, romantic love is work, and you might not think that it's valuable enough to make it worth it to put in that work and to protect yourself the way that we have to. It is a lot of work. And for some people, it probably isn't worth it. That's the truth. That's the black pill. And here's the thing, a lot of our best things that we have, from philosophy to writings to beer, all kinds of stuff like that, even some kinds of honey, those things were all created by guys living in a monastery in relative solitude who didn't want to participate in society or necessarily have a family or participate in the dating and relationship sphere of life. And I personally don't think there's anything wrong with that choice. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking the black pill if that's true for you, unless you take it to a super dark extreme. And so living kind of like a monastic life with more solitude or not wanting to participate in dating and relationships is a perfectly rational and reasonable and acceptable choice, in my opinion, for some people. If you want to have a family, then I think we should avoid the black pill a little bit. But if that's not important to you, it's probably not really worth it to everyone. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. There's a lot of pain and confusion involved if you don't know the whole red pill. And you have to protect yourself and do a lot of stuff right to raise female interest and maintain it. It takes a lot of effort. And for some people, it's definitely worth it. And I think for some people, it's probably not. And again, you know, a lot of monks have produced a lot of great stuff. And if you want to be a great philosopher and just sit in a room and think and listen to music your whole life, I'm not going to blame you for that. I totally get it. It makes perfect sense. It's not crazy. I don't think the black pill is crazy. It's just it's a sane way to live if you don't dip into the darker, more reactionary depths of some people who are black pilled. I think there's a scary end of that as well. So they take that red pill reality in. They're like, oh gosh, I cannot accept this. It's unacceptable. I'm going to do something extreme about it. I don't think that's sane, but I do think it's sane to think about things that way. It is harsh and sometimes hard. And if it's not worth it for you, it makes total sense. So that's the black pill. It's kind of giving up, not participating in dating and relationships anymore because it's not worth it to you. And you can take that pill if you want, and I would never, ever blame you for it. And a lot of this black pill stuff revolves around kind of coping and hopium and stuff. And they think people who take the white pill, which we're going to talk about next, are just coping. And that's a negative interpretation of the white pill. And there is a grain of truth to that, but not necessarily a whole loaf of bread. And so I think it's important to separate that out. And so then that brings us to the white pill. And the white pill is just remaining optimistic, even though you accept the red pill reality. So here's the thing, no matter how bad the red pill reality, the deepest layers of that reality where you're out of the matrix now, no matter how kind of bad that seems, the black pill is countered by the white pill a lot. And I'm going to give you a few ways that the black pill is countered by the white pill. So, for example, we already talked about this, but 10 to 30% of relationships are happy, healthy, and functional. That means there's human beings out there that are experiencing a satisfying relationship that's worth it right now. Some people are doing it well. That's the truth. And once you learn what that looks like, you can kind of see it in society like, oh, okay, that couple probably is in one of those 10 to 30% of couples. And it's really good. And it probably is worth it if you're in one of those couples, which is not most people, but it is significant 10 to 30%. So it is possible. That's like the biggest part of the white pill. It is possible. People are doing it right now. And it's not something like if you had a terrible childhood and things were bad and you had some traumas from that when it comes to dating and relationships, that doesn't mean you're doomed to repeat that yourself. You can work on it and kind of change the patterns in your mind and your behaviors and become a person who can have a healthy relationship. So you're not doomed just because your parents got divorced and it was traumatic. You're not doomed from that. You can learn how to have healthy relationships. It's a skill and we can learn it. And again, there are people doing it right now. Also, here's another aspect of this. The people who push the red pills and the black pills, sometimes they're just wrong. They're not actually showing you reality. There's the actual reality behind the matrix, if you will, and then there's the stuff that these red pill black people talk about. And sometimes they don't 100% match up. So, for example, one example of this is the height thing, like I just talked about. Yes, on a dating app, it's extremely likely that your height will matter because it's all about stats. But in real life, most women, if they see a guy who and he's a little bit taller than them, they're going to be fine with that most of the time. So that's the actual reality. Does it help if you're 6 feet tall? Yeah, but it's not the be all end all. I have lots of clients that are super tall and they're pretty cool and they still struggle with this stuff because when you're the male side of this male female interaction, a lot of it is your internal stuff going on, your internal strength, which in turn affects your body language and how you react to things and your actions and how you take your actions and how you look at someone and how you talk and your cadence and your vocal tonality and everything. It's all related to each other. And we can change a big percentage of that. So that's the actual truth. It's not coping. It's not hopium. That's the truth. And if you're not pushing the actual reality, it's not really the red pill, is it? It's something else, someone pushing something on you. And then the other part of that, and I think this is the deepest part where some red pill, black pill people are incorrect. There's a specific example I want to get into. So there's a theory about a thing called spinning plates. And spinning plates basically means it's a kind of a long-term relationship interpretation of pre-selection. And spinning plates means if you always have more than one option for women that you could be with, that keeps a woman on her toes. And if you're in a relationship for 20 years with her, those spinning plates and just having some other options at all times is what's going to keep her interested in you. Well, there's two responses to that are white pill. It's actually not 100% true because here's the deal, okay? This is what I know for sure. If a woman is actually deeply in love with you, her interest level is 9 out of 10 or higher. If that's actually true, okay, if you maintain her interest level at above 9 indefinitely by using the maintenance program that we talk about, you don't need to have other options around or spinning plates for her to stay in love with you. It's not true. She will stay in love with you and she will not leave you. She will not cheat on you unless she's a disloyal woman in general, because some women are not loyal, which means she's not trustworthy, which is one of the GREATT items that we need to look for. So, assuming that she's a trustworthy, loyal woman in general, if she's deeply in love with you, actually, she can't cheat on you. She can't leave you. She doesn't even think about that. And that's the power of female interest level. That's the actual white pill. And another aspect of that is what keeps her on her toes is not the spinning plates. It's at some level subconsciously, she knows that if she leaves you, you're going to be okay. That's all it is. It's not the same thing as spinning plates. But as brutally real as that sounds and unromantic as that sounds, that is the truth. She needs to know deep down psychologically that if she leaves you, you're going to be just fine. It'll hurt. You'll feel something, but you're going to be fine. It's cool. If she knows that deep down, that keeps her on her toes. And if she is deeply in love with you, you're protected as long as she's a loyal woman in general. Which, yes, there are some women who are and some women who aren't, and we need to identify that, of course. And so for me, the power of female interest level is the biggest white pill that you can take because it's true. It's hard to imagine, like, because most guys have never experienced this and most marriages don't involve a woman who's actually deeply 9 out of 10 in love with the guy. It's hard to talk about this. And once you experience it, you're like, oh my gosh, like when a woman is actually deeply in love with you, she'll do anything for you. She will, if you have a plan to take over the world, she's all in. And a woman who's deeply in love with you, it treats you a lot better than a woman who's indifferent or who has 6 out of 10 interest level. It's a totally different thing. Female interest level is extremely powerful. That's why we focus on it so much around here. And if you want a long-term relationship and you want a family, then I think it's absolutely critical to focus on female interest level and the characteristics that a woman has to have for you to build a good relationship with her and to build a good family with her. So if you do those two things and you protect yourself, then I do think it's worth it. And that's the white pill. And it's all based on the reality of high female interest. And so, of course, even though that's true, we still have to protect ourselves and we should go into a relationship with our eyes wide open. Take that red pill down and accept the reality and go forward with that. But again, there are women out there that probably do make it all worth it. And if she falls and stays deeply in love with you, then you can build a satisfying and some satisfying relationship and something that's really gratifying with a person like that. And by the way, there are women out there who are trying to work on this stuff too, and they want to do it better. I have a lot of women reach out to me, and not just women who also are into women. Straight women reach out to me too all the time. They're trying to learn this stuff. They want to do it better. That is also true. And so, which pill should we take? Well, here's the thing. There's a famous quote. I don't actually know who said this, but I really like this idea. It's a really powerful idea. And it's basically there are no solutions, there's only trade offs. Okay. And so I think you should take all of the pills. I think you should take them all. It's kind of a paradox. They all have a little truth to them. And I think you should take the grains of truth, but sometimes the whole loaf of bread isn't there. Okay, so I think you should take all of the pills because multiple things are true. So I encourage you, and I'm not going to tell you what to think. You should decide this on your own, of course. But I encourage you to be optimistic and protect yourself and go into things with your eyes wide open at the same time. It's a paradox. It's not this blind optimism, and it's not this like eyes closed, harsh reality, I'm giving up. I think it's a balance of be optimistic from the angle of accepting reality. I think that's really important. And so I think that we should understand reality when it comes to male female dynamics as much as possible. That's the red pill. We should sometimes be selectively unaware when it helps you. That's the blue pill. You should remember that you come into the world alone and you go out alone, and only you can make yourself happy and fulfilled. A woman can add to that, but she can't fill a hole inside you, and that will make you stronger. And that's kind of the black pill a little bit. And then, of course, you should approach the world with realistic optimism. Some people are doing this stuff really well together. And when that happens, it's great. And it is possible to build a satisfying relationship with the right woman for you. So I think you should take all of the pills. And as a man, you should lead, in my opinion. It starts with you and your choices and your outlook. You should make the future that you want happen. Plus, collectively, men and women train each other. It's a marketplace, it's an exchange. If you think that women are kind of not the way you want, ask yourself, why is that? Who trained them to be that way? And if you've lived in different countries and different cultures, you will understand that a lot of it is training, and take responsibility for your part in that. Men and women, in my opinion, we need to come together. And I see this from both sides now, actually, that people want it to happen. But you have to control what you can and take care of your side and take care of what you can. And so I encourage you to accept reality, because when we accept reality, we tend to do better, even though the higher levels of awareness sometimes make you think you're doing worse. You're actually not, you're just more aware. So accepting reality helps you do better. And reality works against you if you don't accept it. And there are many levels of awareness out there. So you could say that you can continually take more and more red pills to keep seeing reality more and more clearly over time. But again, make sure that you're looking at reality itself and not people that are pushing a red pill or a black pill, because sometimes they're just pushing a grain of truth that isn't the whole loaf of bread. And those people are fallible as well. And so, somebody in the comments wrote, red pill and run away. That's kind of black pill, or lose half your stuff. It's just not worth it. That is one reasonable response to this, to be honest, but I don't think it's the best one. And if you don't like the way society is, take a little bit of responsibility for just your little part in that and change it just as much as you can. I think we need to lead this. What are you doing everything that you can to make things the way that you want in the world? That's our obligation as a man. It's our job to lead. If you don't like the way the world is, do your part to change it. And I'm not saying that every single person can change everything about the world. I'm not saying that you can change the whole society. But there probably is something that you can do. And if you're not doing that, well, then, you know, in my opinion, you're kind of putting down your obligation as a man. So that's kind of how I see it. And so I think you should identify a woman who's not perfect, because nobody's perfect, but who has all the necessary qualities that we're looking for, which are very specific. You should do what's necessary for her to fall in love with you and then to stay in love with you, especially if you want a family. That's the solution. And you want to recruit a teammate who's part of your crew that's going the same direction with you, that's on your team. You want to recruit someone to be on your team and not carry someone who's part of the cargo. That's a big part of this. So don't settle for less than that and make sure she falls and stays in love with you. And then also make yourself happy because a woman can't make you happy. She can only add to your happiness. That's another little kind of part of the black pill that I think is positive to some degree. And again, it's for society in general. Yes, some things are really messed up in modern society, in my opinion. And if you don't like that, do what you can to start changing that because it came from somewhere and the change is going to come from somewhere. And it starts with us each day and how we do things and how we decide to look at the world and our influence that we have in our little spheres. And it can grow bigger and bigger. One of the biggest things I've learned over the years is the amount of impact that one person and one man can have is actually huge. If you have a certain kind of skill, you should press on that to make the world better. Because I've seen, like, I saw, like, my university, right? I used to work at a university as an administrator for a long time. Then we had a university president, and he was not very great. He was kind of like, whatever kind of guy. And then a super dynamic, amazing new president came in, and he changed the whole campus, changed everyone there's lives, 25, 30,000 people's lives for the better, the whole city, and actually my whole state, to be honest. He had a big impact on all of that. And I just saw the amount of impact that you can have if you have certain skills. So there are individuals who can make a huge difference, but we can all make some small difference. And it starts with you and how you decide to live your own life every day. And I'm not saying that you even should be in a relationship. It's just if you want a family, the way that I'm recommending, I think is the best way to do it. And if not, it's totally fine to just work on yourself or be by yourself or not get involved with that. But if you want a family, there's a way to do it. And so make reality your teammate and keep your head up. Lead yourself, the woman that you choose if you decide to do it, and ultimately society in a positive direction. That's our role as men and almost our obligation, in my opinion. And when it comes to a long term relationship with a woman, identifying a woman who has those necessary characteristics and then making sure she falls and stays deeply in love with you is the best that we can do. That's as good as we're going to get in this reality until there's AI wives and we're all doing weird stuff in the virtual world or whatever. Right now, that's the best we can do. And again, I do think there are some women out there who do make it worth it, especially if you want a family and you still have to protect yourself. And that's actually why I wrote the Attract and Keep Her system, because you need to protect yourself and allow a woman to fall deeply in love with you and maintain her high interest level indefinitely if you want that kind of relationship. That's the best we can do if you want to have that long-term relationship and or a family. So that's why I wrote the Attract and Keep Her system. If you don't own it and haven't gone through it already, highly recommend that. And if you already own it, go through it again. Read it a few times because I think that's the way. I think that's the answer to all of this stuff. And it includes all of these different pills in there. And you have to go in with eyes wide open and protect yourself. And so the Attract and Keep Her system does all of that. And if you haven't gotten it yet, there's a link to it below and also a link to the audiobook version if you'd rather listen to it. And I would just listen to it on repeat. And if you are just having fun right now, you're just going for hookups, you're not really looking for a relationship, following the steps inside the Good Guy Guide also provides you with some protection as well, because even if you're just going out and having fun, we have to protect ourselves. can be a dangerous world for men out there when it comes to interacting with women, and we need to have that layer of protection. So don't talk to another woman unless you have that protective bubble of the attract and keeper system if you want a relationship, or the good guy guide if you're just going out and having fun right now. And of course, we have a lot of free material for you as well. If you haven't seen that already, we have free courses, free ebooks, and a lot of free articles. There's a lot of presentations on our YouTube channel and on Spotify, for example. So there's tons of free information out there as well. And we have an excellent weekly newsletter that is part of this red pill that shows you a deeper level of reality each time and some other ways to respond to that. And so if you are not already part of this community, I highly recommend that you go to datingadviceformenwholovewomen.com. That's datingadviceformenwholovewomen.com. And grab one of our free books or courses. And when you do that, you're going to be automatically added to our email list. And then you're going to get that weekly Thursday newsletter. And then you're going to have as much red pill as you could possibly want. And you're going to see reality more clearly. And you're going to know how to respond to it and how to protect yourself. And so, with all of that, thank you for checking out this presentation today. And now I'm going to get to some questions from the chat. All right, so here we go. Yeah, we should start a podcast. Josh, let's talk about that. Okay. All right, so question. If a woman only sees you as a 5 or 6 as far as attractiveness, but was attracted enough to become your girlfriend, does that limit how in love she can be with you? Is the interest level scale capped? Really great question. So here's the actual answer to that. If a woman is at least open to you, meaning her interest level is 1 out of 10, you can raise it up to 9 out of 10 and then maintain it there. And so if it's a situation where it's like you asked her out, she said no, you asked her out, she said no, and then the third time she finally said yes, that could be a woman with an agenda who's just there dating you because now she's like, okay, I don't have any other options, or I'm hungry, I don't have enough food in my pantry this week. All right, I'll go out with this guy. And then she just keeps saying yes when you ask her stuff. That's not female interest in terms of romantic interest in you. But if she saw you, all you have to be is pleasant looking or better in her eyes. If she sees you that way and she's available, you can raise her interest. If she doesn't, there's nothing we can do. So you said she sees you as a 5 or 6. That kind of just means like, not bad, not ugly. I'm not actively disliking his appearance. That's good enough for something to start. Now, here's the thing. It takes more time usually and more effort to raise her interest from 1 to 9 than from 7 to 9. She's like, oh, that guy's really good looking. But, it doesn't, it's not that different because even if a woman is super interested in a guy right away at first sight, he can still mess it up at any point, and it still takes some time for that to solidify. So yes, the answer to your question is there's no limit on how in love she can be with you. If she finds you pleasant looking or better, she can fall deeply in love with you if she's available and all the other factors are there, if that makes sense. And actually, here's another interesting thing that I know. Studies show that the happiest marriages involve a man who's slightly not as good looking as the woman. So both people are actually happier in a relationship if the woman's slightly more attractive physically. Who knew? Is it possible to have frequent, fulfilling, intimate life in a long-term relationship? Yes. So when a woman is deeply in love with you, she actually has 9 out of 10 interest or higher. She doesn't get a headache. She wants to kiss you all the time. She's going to chase you around the dinner table at 75 and still want to be intimate with you. That's the truth. So a lot of this, like kind of dead bedrooms and marriages, just happens to be the female interest level is low, or it was never there to begin with. That's the main problem behind that. There are other factors too, of course, but that's the primary one. To be honest, that's the red pill reality. It's very important that she's deeply in love with you. That's why I talk about it so much. And that includes getting intimate. If she's deeply in love with you, she's not going to get a headache very often. She's going to want to sleep with you and kiss you all the time. She can't get enough. That's what high female interest level means. She wants to be around you more. She wants to be physical with you more. She'll probably, if a woman is actually deeply in love with you, this is very interesting. There'll probably be a point in time where it kind of changes, where she's starting to want it more than you. That can also happen. So yes, it's definitely possible. Um, all men need to understand internal confidence only comes from pursuit of self-actualization. Yeah, so I think that's partially true. Most of this stuff is internal to yourself, and you should work on that first. And that's kind of the foundation. And then there's stuff in between a man and a woman that's relational, and we can work on that as well. Oh, thanks for saying that, Christian. Glad the Attract and Keeper system has helped you out. That's awesome to hear. Uh, will we get the Good Guy Guide audiobook? Does anyone else want the audiobook version of the Good Guy Guide? Tell me in the comments if you want an audiobook version of the Good Guy Guide. I might produce it, I don't know. It's a lot of work to produce an audiobook, by the way, but I would be happy to do that. Okay, all right, somebody does. So that's at least 2 guys who want that. I'll think about that. I've been thinking about it, but again, it's a lot of takes a lot to produce an audiobook, but I don't mind doing it, so I'll think about that. Okay, so this is a good question, Christian. Christian asks, I think in the Attract and Keeper system, you say to go on as many first dates as you can for practice, even if you're not necessarily that interested in a woman. What's holding me back from that is seeing it as wasting her time if I don't actually like her. What do you think? Really great question, Christian. So this is actually a lot deeper than it sounds at first. So you don't have to do that, but I highly recommend it because when you meet the right woman for you, you don't want to have to kind of turn it on and be really nervous. You want to have some practice before you play in the game, let's say, right? So when you're used to that environment, it's easier and you're going to have a better time with the one that you're really interested in, and she's going to enjoy it more and have a higher chance of ending up with you, right? So I do think it's a good recommendation. And I understand your concern about that. So this goes deeper into the realities of male female interaction. We tend to think of a first date as a lot more important than women. Okay. So I personally think, especially after getting to know this stuff for 21 years, the first date is almost nothing. So if you go out for coffee with the woman and you're not that interested in her, but you have a fun conversation and you work on some stuff and you give her a good time and you buy her a coffee, she got a free coffee out of it. What's wrong with that? There is nothing wrong with it. You don't owe a woman anything after one date, just like she doesn't owe you anything. Sometimes we have super high interest after one date, and it's like, bro, until she gets to the third date, she shows up for 3 dates in a row with you without any weird flags or like kind of not showing up for one or rejecting one of your date offers. She shows up for 3 dates consistently, and you kissed her on the second date and you're kissing her on the third. Until you get to that third date and she's there with you, we almost have nothing. That's the start. That's the foundation. So before that time, it's really like you don't owe a woman anything. You can take her out, have a great time at a happy hour. Take her to a really cool one. Buy her a $5 happy hour drink, or maybe it's 20 now. I don't know. Inflation is crazy, but get her one drink, make her laugh. She enjoys herself, and then just don't call her again. It's fine. You're not breaking up with her. You're not hurting her. You're not leading her on. You're going on one date. And women do this all the time. Women have no problem going on 1 or 2 dates with a guy. That's why we got to wait till the third date to say, like, oh, this might be something real later. We still have some time, but the third date is the start. So the first date, I wouldn't ask her out again if you're not interested, because now you're starting to get to that territory, but I would disregard that completely for the first date. Go take her to do something fun. Have fun with her. That's something valuable. You're still giving her something. You're not taking anything from her. Okay, so I understand that kind of a mindset, and it's actually good to be considerate, of course. I think that's a good way to think in general. But I would kind of let that go for a first date because of the way that male female dynamics actually works and the way women tend to look at it. When they've only been on one date with a guy, we've only been on one date. That's how they see it. And after that, you should kind of cut it off. But I think you can go on as many first dates as you want with no qualms and no problems behind. That's how I see it, at least. Good question. Yeah, okay. All right. So, another question. Can a woman that has been unfaithful change over a period of years, or you shouldn't ever bet on that because it's so unlikely? Ooh, okay. This is a really, really good question. So, there's a couple of nuances here that are interesting, I think. There's a lot of talk these days in like red pill, black pill kind of stuff about body count. And yeah, I mean, like in more traditional cultures around the world, you almost have to be a virgin to get married. It's like very important. Sometimes there's traditions that go back a while where like the family would check the next day to kind of make sure that the woman was a virgin when she got married. So it's very important because, you know, in terms of you're going to put your efforts and resources into a child, you want to make sure that it's yours, right? And especially if the woman is going to be living with your family, like in back in the day in traditional times, right? Like the whole family is going to be kind of taking her in and all of your children, right? And so it's important to make sure that it's your children and that she's going to be kind of loyal to you. She's going to be loyal to you. The loyalty when you're committed to a woman, you trade your commitment for her loyalty. It's the number one thing at that point. Okay, so it's extremely important that she's loyal to you. But here's the thing: in the modern West society, there's a big difference between having some body count before she meets you and someone who has cheated before. That's a different thing. And those are different things to look for. So, on the body count thing, you can look at it however you want to. Your own personal views on that are fine. But when it comes to cheating, the number one red flag of a woman possibly cheating on you is if she cheated in the past, and especially if it's a pattern. Did she cheat on her last 3 boyfriends in a row? It's pretty likely she's gonna do it to you, and it doesn't usually change. It's usually a pattern, okay? But here's the thing, it's another thing to look for, and women will reveal this to you over time, and a lot of times a lot sooner than you think. We're just not usually paying attention to red flags when a woman is hot and we're sitting there with her on the first date. You're just letting them all go because it's like, "Ah, I got these chemicals, feels good, she's good looking, I'm in." Well, if you pay attention, she's going to show you the red flags usually really quickly. And definitely over the course of a year or two, she will definitely show it to you. So don't marry a woman before you've known her for 2 years, because by then you'll know exactly what you're getting into. And before that, we can still a little bit not be fully sure. So, anyway, if she says that she's cheated on all of her past boyfriends or husbands, it's likely that she'll cheat on you. If she has cheated on one boyfriend before, it's actually important why. So there's a few reasons why women cheat. One of them is revenge. So maybe she was deeply in love with the guy and loyal, and he cheated on her first, and then she did it as revenge. Women have this kind of female pride, and a lot of them fill up with that and they do it as revenge, but they didn't want to do it before that. That can happen, and a good woman can even do that. Okay, so she's getting that female pride back by doing it back. Okay, that can happen. So the context is also important. Did she cheat because he cheated first? That's different than I cheated on my last 5 boyfriends. It's a pattern. Or, she was in a relationship for 6 years or a marriage for 30 years. And for the past 5 years of the marriage or the past year of the relationship, she had zero interest level in the guy. She just didn't leave yet. She didn't leave him. She just had zero interest. And then she kind of found his replacement in the meantime. So was it because she had zero interest level in the guy one time in one relationship and she found someone new and then wasn't just didn't end the relationship before she hooked up with the new guy? That's different than I cheated on my last 5 boyfriends. Does that make sense? So it's nuanced a little bit, and you've got to be really careful with that and look at the patterns and look at the context of it to be fully sure. And again, a woman will reveal to you if she's loyal or not over the course of a year and a half to 2 years. For sure, you'll be able to know by then. So look for that pattern. And then also, the other factor of this is, has she been actively working on herself? Sometimes, even us, before we turn 25, and it's usually around 22 for women, they tend to solidify a little faster in their own character. When it's a young woman, sometimes they fall in and out of love faster. They can do things that they wouldn't do when they're 25, when they're 19. And so kind of take a look at that as well. So look at the context very carefully. And just because a woman has some body count doesn't mean she's disloyal in a relationship. So maybe she's hooked up with a few people, but when she had a boyfriend, it was just him for 5 years. Look for those patterns. That will tell you if she's going to be loyal or not. And if she's worked on herself, sometimes a woman had a pattern for a couple of relationships and she realized, like, oh, this is on me. I shouldn't be doing this. It's hurtful to myself and to the people that I care about. I got to stop this shit. I got to figure out why it's happening and what I can do about it. And she starts working on her issues and her own self esteem and all this stuff. And it can improve. But you don't want to be with a woman for her potential. You want to accept her as she is right now. So she would have already had to do all of that work. And now she meets you and she's not going to be like that anymore. But I would still think that's a lot riskier than a woman who's shown a pattern of loyalty over time. So if a woman has a pattern of cheating in the past, I think it's very unlikely that she's going to change and not cheat on you. But if she has a little bit of a body count, look for if she's loyal or not instead of just that. That's how I would pursue it. Those are different things. All right. So if you live with a woman and her interest begins slipping below 9 out of 10, how do you raise it back up since you can't have space between dates for her to think about you? Yeah, okay, this is a great question, Scott. So you can't have that same space that you had in the beginning, but the answer to this, if her interest level starts slipping, is to pull back a little bit still. So obviously, if you live in the same house, you're not going to like not see her for 5 days or whatever. However, you give her a little more space. You pull back and like the instinct that we have is to chase when she's losing interest, and what we want to do instead is pull back like a vacuum, and that raises it back up. So you need to let her come back towards you. Give her a little less. Text her a little less often. Show her a little less affection. Back up a little bit. Pull that vacuum back. If she still has some interest level left, that'll start to tick it up over time. So you still do need to pull back. It's just a little bit different in how you express it. And then another thing you can do is, and this again, when her interest level is low, like 2 or 3 out of 10, this doesn't really work that well. But if it's like 6 or 7 and she's just starting to lose it a little bit, you can bring in a little pre-selection and just like randomly make a comment like, oh, hey, there's this new girl, Jenny, at my work, asked me if I would go to a happy hour with her after work today. Isn't that interesting? Just kind of drop in a line like that as if you didn't say anything, or she asked me to have coffee at work or whatever. It's really interesting, huh? Like just kind of drop it and then move on to something else. Don't dwell on it. You can drop a pre-selection comment in there. That can, but that you got to be careful with that because if her interest level is 1 or 2, she's really like on the edge. It might just exacerbate that at that point. But if she still has pretty high interest, but it's slipped a little bit, you could pop a comment like that in there and it'll help raise it up a little bit. But in general, the answer is to pull back a little bit, be chill, lead emotionally as well. Like try to make things fun again. You know what I mean? Like take the seriousness out, take the heaviness out, just like you did in the beginning, and come to that situation with a light attitude and let her slowly come back towards you over time. And she's going to take up her interest level at that point. So that's how you handle that in a general, from a general point of view. Okay, I asked out a girl twice, once by text, once I left her a voicemail, both times she ghosted me. Now, after no context, she has started approaching me and talking to me actually. Should I ask her out again? Okay, first, I just want to say don't leave a woman a voicemail. This is actually advice from like 20 years ago when we didn't have cell phones, but do not leave a voice recording on a woman's phone unless you're already married to her and it's like, hey, please pick up the kids at 5:30, that's fine. But when you're asking her out in the beginning, don't leave her a voicemail and try not to like leave things hanging where it's like you put something out there and you're waiting for her. Obviously, when you're texting her, you're doing that, but that's something we have to do. Leaving a voicemail is extra. Okay, so don't do that. That's a mistake, first of all. And don't ask her out over that. Make sure you're talking to her when you ask her out, or you're texting with her and you're sending a message and she's in that conversation before you ask her out. So here's the thing. Sometimes It might be because you left her a voicemail that she didn't kinda respond, and then you pulled back and waited a little bit, and now her interest got piqued a little bit, and now she's like, "Hey, let's see what's up with this guy." You can try one more time if you want because of the way that you acted in this interaction. You can ask her out one more time. Normally, I wouldn't say so, but in this case, because you kinda made a couple of mistakes that might have kinda made her not sure if she wanted to see you or not, I would try it, but make sure that she's either in a texting conversation with you when you ask her out, or you're actually on the phone with her. Then ask her to meet up with you. Don't do it over a voicemail, if that makes sense. So, yeah, you can try one more time. Um, Sometimes a woman's not romantically interested in a guy, and he'll ask her out. She kinda says, maybe some other time." He tries again, "Oh, I'm busy on Wednesday night, sorry," and she never makes a counteroffer, and then she realizes like, "Hey, I like that guy as a friend," or, "Hey, I want some male attention right now. I want some validation." Then she reaches out to that guy and gets that from him, and then she goes out with the guy she's interested in when he asks her out, if that makes sense. So that could be happening, or maybe your actions kind of made her hesitate a little bit, and so because it's not clear in this case, try one more time and don't make that mistake of leaving a voicemail again. And then if she doesn't agree the next time you ask her out, obviously now it's time to move on, if that makes sense. All right. Would you agree that what keeps a woman, respect and emotional connection, is almost the opposite from what attracts a woman, not giving her too much attention, showing her almost. That's very close. Yes, for the most part, I would agree with that. I would just slightly modify that to say that respecting a woman, for example, preserves her interest level. It keeps it from falling, but it doesn't raise it. It doesn't spike her attraction. It doesn't raise her interest level. So those maintenance, and then there's other parts of the maintenance program, like affection, for example, that you shouldn't even do when her interest level is 7 out of 10. You gotta wait till it's all the way to 9 before you start doing that stuff. So there's a part of affection, which is one of the parts of the maintenance program that maintains high female interest over time. One of those things is affection, and that's where you kinda hold her in your arms and you look her in the eyes for a few seconds with no ulterior motives. You're not gonna kiss her or anything like that. You're just giving her your full attention with your eyes. If her interest level is 7 or 1 or 0, she's not gonna like it, it's not gonna work. It's gonna be a little weird and, like, kinda cringy. But if it's 9 out of 10, she's deeply in love with you, she's looking at you with googly eyes, she fully respects you and is actually deeply in love with you, she's gonna love that, and it's gonna maintain that high interest. So there's some things you should do at different stages of the relationship that don't work in the beginning, of course. So that would not help you and hurt you in the beginning, like you're saying, and it will help you later on. But there are some things like respect that you should start from the very beginning, because showing respect to a woman with average self esteem or better preserves her interest level in you. So if she sees you and it's a 5 to start out, it'll preserve that at a 5. Whereas if you disrespect her, it can lower it, but it doesn't raise her interest level beyond that. And that's the other stuff we got to do with the attraction being a challenge and all that stuff. So, yeah, it's mostly right, in my opinion. Very good observation. All right, last one. When a woman who wasn't interested in me in the past now tells me every story about her life, laughs at everything I say, and keeps initiating conversations and interactions, does it mean anything? Well, that depends on your past interactions with her. Women value male attention sometimes. They want a male friend, like they want the male perspective. They feel safer when they're with a guy they can trust and they feel comfortable with. There's a lot of value that males have to a woman in general. That's why I talked about this before, but that's why a lot of women like to have gay friends, because they have that male thing that a man can provide without necessarily the romantic stuff getting in the way, making it weird and complicated. A lot of women like that. And even if a woman isn't romantically interested in you, doesn't mean she's not interested in you as a friend or actually respects you in your business field. Those things are separate from each other, and they can all be there, or a couple of them can be there. And so, yeah, she might just really value you as a person in general, think you're really cool, but she doesn't have there's women that I know from my past where it's like, I really like that person. She's really cool, but I'm not attracted to her at all. There's no romantic connection, but she's awesome. I would love to hang out with her. So women feel that towards us even more often than we feel it towards them, I think. So it could be that. Now, because I wasn't there for your initial interaction, I can't tell you for sure. I don't know if you kind of didn't present yourself, like how many times you asked her out. I don't know any of that stuff. So if you asked her out a couple of times already, it's highly likely that she's not interested in you that way. If you only asked her out once and you kind of just like moved on after that, it is possible. And the only way to find out is to either put her back through the system again, ask her out one more time and see, or as a half step, when you're hanging out with her, you're having fun, you can use what I call a verbal primer and see her reaction to that. So, like, let's say that you're hanging out with her and you're laughing and having fun, she's hitting your arm. You can say something like, "Hey, stop looking at me like that," or "I might have to ask you out on a date," or "Hey, if you keep looking at me like that, I might have to kiss you later." Just throw out kind of a comment like that that raises the romantic side possibility and gauge her reaction. Now, when you say something like that, you don't want to like stare her down and like wait around for her reaction. Like, what are you gonna do with that thing I just said? You want to drop that line in and kind of turn your head to the side and like pretend you didn't say anything. Just keep going normally and change the the mode of conversation. And just kind of like you didn't say anything at all. Just say it, deliver it with good eye contact and confidence, and then kind of turn away a little bit so it's comfortable now too, and then see how she responds to that. And that can tell you if that romantic spark is there or she just still wants to be friends with you because you're a really cool guy. You can tell by the way she responds to that comment. Or again, you can try asking her out one more time and seeing how that goes. Put her back through the system again, especially if you only asked her out once before. So I hope that all makes sense. Thank you all so much for being here with me today. Wait, let's do one more, okay? What studies show? Oh, okay. Christian, send me an email about studies, and I can send you a lot of stuff, and especially specific areas that you're looking at. Just send me an email, and I'll respond as soon as I can to that. So, thank you all so much for being here with me this evening. I appreciate you being here, and I hope you got something out of this live stream. I think that we should take all the pills, have our eyes wide open, protect ourselves, and if you want a relationship, make sure that you do it with a woman who makes it worth it, and then do everything right with her to make sure she falls and stays deeply in love with you. And if you do all of that, I think you're going to be golden. Have a great rest of your night, and I will talk to you soon.